When a reporter tried to challenge Mel Gibson on his Christian beliefs, he didn't just sit back and take it. He fired back with an epic response that left everyone stunned. But before we get to that moment, let's talk about why Mel Gibson has been such a controversial yet powerful figure in Hollywood. Mel Gibson isn't just an actor. He's a filmmaker, a storyteller, and perhaps most importantly, a man of deep faith. But that faith has often put him at odds with Hollywood elites and media critics who don't always share his beliefs. Over the years, he's faced backlash for his outspoken Christianity, especially after directing The Passion of the Christ, a film that became one of the highest-grossing R-rated movies of all time, despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy surrounding it. So when this particular reporter, known for being skeptical, even hostile toward Christianity, decided to press Gibson on his faith, it wasn't entirely surprising. What was surprising, however, was Gibson's response. The interview started off like any other. Questions about his career, his latest projects, and his experiences in Hollywood. But then, the tone shifted. The reporter leaned in and asked, in a somewhat condescending tone, "Mel, you've been very vocal about your Christian beliefs. Given how divisive religion can be, do you really think it's responsible to promote such a rigid worldview?" For a moment, there was silence. Gibson looked at the reporter, his expression calm but intense, and then he smiled. "I find it interesting," he said, "that you call faith divisive when, for billions of people around the world, it's what brings them together. But let me ask you something. Do you think it's irresponsible to stand for something you believe in?" The reporter hesitated. "Well, it's just that religion has been used to justify a lot of harm throughout history." Gibson nodded. "No doubt. But so has just about everything else. Politics, money, even science when it's in the wrong hands. The problem isn't faith itself, it's what people do with it. And I don't see how encouraging people to have faith, to find hope, to believe in something greater than themselves, is a bad thing." The reporter tried to steer the conversation away, but Gibson wasn't done. "Let's talk about The Passion of the Christ for a second," he continued. "That film was called anti-Semitic. Too violent, too extreme. But you know what it really was? Honest. It told a story that people have believed in for thousands of years, and it made people feel something. And that's what film is supposed to do. If someone doesn't like it, they don't have to watch it. But why is it that when Hollywood makes movies that mock Christianity, it's called artistic expression, but when someone like me makes a movie about faith, it's called dangerous?" The reporter shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting this kind of pushback. "But don't you think movies like The Passion fuel division?" Gibson's smile widened. "You keep using that word, division, but I think you're missing something. When that movie came out, do you know what happened? People lined up for hours to see it. Churches rented out entire theaters. Families sat together, watched it, and cried. Even people who weren't Christians walked away from that film talking about it, questioning things, thinking, that's not division, that's engagement. That's exactly what a film should do." At this point, the reporter was visibly flustered, but Gibson wasn't about to let up. "You see," he continued, "Hollywood has no problem with strong convictions, unless those convictions are Christian. Think about it. How many times do we see movies that celebrate atheism, mock faith, or push agendas that go against traditional values? And that's fine. Freedom of expression, right? But the moment someone makes a film that takes Christianity seriously, suddenly it's controversial. That double standard is what's divisive." The reporters scrambled for a counterpoint but struggled to find one. Finally, they settled on a different approach. "But don't you think as a public figure you have a responsibility to be more inclusive in your messaging?" Gibson laughed. "Inclusive? You mean I should water down my beliefs so they're more palatable? Funny, I don't see anyone asking atheists to be more inclusive of Christians. I don't see anyone telling other filmmakers to make their movies more inclusive of traditional values? No, I think the real issue here is that some people don't like what I stand for. And that's fine. They don't have to agree with me. But I won't apologize for believing in something. The tension in the room was thick. The reporter, clearly realizing they were outmatched, wrapped up the interview as quickly as possible. But the damage, or perhaps the victory, had already been done. The interview clip went viral almost immediately. People across social media hailed Gibson's response as a masterclass in standing firm in one's beliefs. Fans praised his courage, while critics scrambled to spin the narrative. Some called him defensive. Others claimed he was out of touch. But one thing was clear: he had struck a nerve. And this wasn't the first time. Over the years, Mel Gibson has been a lightning rod for controversy, not just because of his past personal struggles, but because of his refusal to conform to Hollywood's expectations. After The Passion of the Christ was released in 2004, Gibson found himself ostracized from much of the industry. Studios distanced themselves, critics tore him apart, and many assumed his career was over. But then, in 2016, he made a stunning comeback with Hacksaw Ridge, a film about real-life World War II hero Desmond Doss, a Christian who refused to carry a weapon but saved dozens of soldiers on the battlefield. The film was a massive success, earning 6 Academy Award nominations and winning 2. Once again, Gibson had proven that faith-based storytelling wasn't just relevant, it was powerful. And now, with the upcoming sequel to The Passion of the Christ, reportedly titled The Passion of the Christ, Resurrection, on the horizon, Gibson is once again in the spotlight. And once again, the critics are out in full force, questioning the necessity of such a film, accusing him of pushing an agenda. But Gibson remains unfazed. In a recent interview, he stated, "I'm not making this movie for the critics. I'm making it for the people who want to see it. If that's a problem for some people, well, they don't have to watch it." And that's the essence of Mel Gibson's approach to Hollywood. He doesn't beg for approval. He doesn't chase trends. He tells the stories he believes in, regardless of the backlash. Love him or hate him, you can't deny that he's one of the few in Hollywood willing to stand up for what he believes, no matter the cost. And in an industry where convictions are often compromised for the sake of acceptance, that makes him a rare breed. So what do you think? Was Mel Gibson right to fire back at the reporter? Is Hollywood unfairly biased against Christianity? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. It didn't take long for the mainstream media to react to the viral interview. Some outlets tried to downplay it, framing Gibson's response as combative or overly defensive. Others attempted to paint him as an extremist, suggesting that his passion for faith-based films was part of a larger, more controversial agenda. But what the critics failed to realize was that Gibson's words resonated with millions of people, especially those who feel that Hollywood has grown increasingly hostile toward traditional values and religious beliefs. Social media exploded with support, with fans praising him for his courage, his honesty, and his refusal to back down. One tweet read, "Mel Gibson just exposed Hollywood's hypocrisy in the best way possible. If they can make movies about everything else, why is faith the one thing they want silenced?" Another comment on YouTube stated, "This is why I respect Mel Gibson. He's not afraid to say what so many of us are thinking. Hollywood preaches tolerance, but won't tolerate Christianity." Of course, there were also critics who doubled down, claiming that Gibson was playing the victim card or trying to stir controversy for attention. But the reality is, Gibson doesn't need controversy to stay relevant. His work speaks for itself. And let's talk about that work for a moment, because Mel Gibson isn't just another actor. He's a director who has crafted some of the most powerful films of the past few decades. From Braveheart to Apocalypto to Hacksaw Ridge, his movies aren't just entertainment. They're statements. They challenge audiences. They tell stories of perseverance, sacrifice, and, more often than not, faith. That's why The Passion of the Christ was so impactful. It wasn't just a movie. It was an experience. And despite the backlash from critics, it made over $600 million at the box office on a $30 million budget. Even today, it remains one of the most financially successful independent films of all time. So when Gibson announced that he was working on a sequel, titled The Passion of the Christ, Resurrection, it was only a matter of time before the attacks started again. Critics called it unnecessary. Some even accused him of profiting off religion. But Gibson made his intentions clear. This story isn't just about suffering, it's about victory, he said in an interview. It's about the most transformative moment in history. If that offends people, that's not my problem. And that's exactly why Mel Gibson continues to be a thorn in Hollywood's side. He refuses to conform. He refuses to let the industry dictate what stories can and can't be told. And that independence has cost him dearly at times. After The Passion, Gibson's career took a hit. Hollywood distanced itself from him. He faced personal struggles, public scandals, and a media machine that was eager to write him off entirely. But instead of fading into obscurity, he fought his way back. With Hacksaw Ridge, he reminded the world why he was one of the best directors in the business. The film won multiple Academy Awards and proved that audiences were still hungry for stories of faith, courage, and resilience. Now, with The Passion, Resurrection on the horizon, the cycle is repeating itself. The media attacks, the industry skepticism, the accusations, it's all happening again. But if history has shown us anything, it's that Mel Gibson doesn't back down. And maybe that's what frustrates Hollywood the most. They've tried to cancel him. They've tried to bury his work under controversy. But he keeps coming back, stronger than before. So here's the question. Why is faith such a controversial topic in Hollywood? Why is it that movies can explore every other theme under the sun, but when someone like Mel Gibson makes a film about Christianity, it's suddenly a problem? Some argue that Hollywood has an agenda, one that embraces certain narratives while suppressing others. And Gibson himself has hinted at this, saying in past interviews that the industry is controlled by people who don't want stories of faith to be told. Others believe it's simply a matter of economics, that Hollywood caters to global audiences and doesn't want to risk alienating certain markets. But that argument falls apart when you look at the numbers. Faith-based films have consistently performed well at the box office. Movies like The Passion of the Christ, Heaven is for Real, and God's Not Dead have all been major financial successes.